Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene went on a completely unhinged, expletive-filled rant against Joe Biden. So now I'm going to show you a really, really small snippet of it because, well, most of it's on Gitter, and I don't want to Gitter some viruses from going to Gitter or get hacked or anything like that. But I will show you this little piece so you can kind of get the gist of her whole video. Take a look.
Joe Biden, you're not a president. You're a piece of shit.
All right, so she adds in the, the Gitter video, she says thousands of Americans are stuck over there in Afghanistan, and you're letting the Taliban kick your ass while you're lecturing governors about masks and mandates. Do your job. Bring these Americans home. All right, so I got a couple of things that I want to say, and some important points and some not so important points. So we'll go through it. So for one, well, he is the president. That's it. He's a president. He is the president of the United States. That fact is unequivocal. I know. She means in the concept of, or the context of, well, he's not a leader because we got people stuck in Afghanistan. Oh, okay. Well, what about when, of course, Donald Trump? I know I'm doing whataboutism here already, but Donald Trump also left people in Syria when we didn't defend our allies, the Kurds. We just kind of left them. Okay. Anything about that? Anything about that? No, of course not. But let's go to the relevant parts here. All right. So for one, we're not at war with the Taliban anymore. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. And we don't want to be at war. That's something that the American people, both Democrats and Republicans, tend to agree with. We didn't want to be at war with the Taliban in Afghanistan. And so we support the pullout from Afghanistan. And so, all right, that said, she brings in, for some reason, masks and vaccines, as if that has anything to do with anything, what she's talking about. And third, of course, there should be a focus, and there is a focus, on bringing Americans home from Afghanistan, as well as Afghan allies. So now there are some significant problems with doing so. Right now, administration officials say that some 10,000 to 15,000 U.S. citizens are still currently in Afghanistan. So that's a lot of people to get out. Understand that that's going to take a lot of time. And so it's not a good situation. So now, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin made some statements about this in a press conference. He said the first priority was to evacuate, quote, all American citizens who want to get out of Afghanistan. And the second was, of course, to get out as many as possible the Afghans who work with U.S. forces and could now be in danger. And so, of course, that's incredibly obvious. Yes, that should be the goal. That is the goal. Great. We knew a whole bunch of people wanted to leave prior to Biden taking office. Both administrations dropped the ball. And I agree with that. I do agree with that. Now, of course, Austin added, the U.S. forces in Afghanistan currently lacked the capability to pick up the large numbers of Americans stranded in Kabul, and bringing them to the airport. So this is more like a logistical challenge. All right. Well, now, this could have been mitigated with some better planning, both from the Trump administration as well as the Biden administration. All right. So there's fair criticism to go around for both. And no, it may sound like I'm trying to both sides of the thing, but in this situation, there is nuance, and both sides do happen to have some fault. With, of course, Biden thinking that he had more time than he actually did, and Trump just literally not planning anything at all. Just like, LOL, get out of the Afghanistan, you know, kind of shooting from the hip on that, even though on the policy position, he's absolutely right. We should have gotten Afghanistan, and it was good that we were out of Afghanistan. All right. So now, what do we do about it? Well, one thing, I know what we can't do, send in more troops. Let's not do that. In fact, we already have over 5,000 U.S. troops that Biden had sent in, helping operations in the Kabul airport. So we don't really want to send more. As Austin noted, that the administration does not want to send troops into Kabul because it would risk more conflict with the Taliban, and said that the State Department was in touch with the Taliban through diplomatic channels in order to ensure that U.S. passport holders would be able to travel to the airport. The Taliban is currently facilitating that agreement. And look, I get not wanting to trust him. I don't trust him. Joe Biden did a recent interview, and he's like, yeah, I don't trust them. But again, we don't really want to start a new conflict with them and get mired there for another 20 years. That's the last thing the American people want to do. Now, of course, if you ask the defense contractors, well, they're more than happy to sign us up for another 20 years, or Warhawks that are on the media, etc. But for now, Joe Biden's like, no, we're not interested. All right, I do want to get out of here. And so the whole point, of course, of doing things the way that we're doing, even though it's not great, but is to try to get as many people out as fast as you can without people shooting at each other, which would, of course, make things even worse. So you don't want to send the troops, right? As for Biden goes, again, Washington has pledged to evacuate all the remaining American citizens, along with an additional 50 to 65,000 Afghans, such as former translators for the U.S. military. And of course, that's good. But already, Fox News right-wingers have turned around immediately and said, oh my God, Afghan refugees, how dare you? How dare you bring them all in? All right. So now, again, I think I wish they would have done this sooner, planned it better to get people out, even if they didn't need to, just as a contingency to have something prepared for a quick exit of American citizens and Afghan allies. This was a failure on the part of the Pentagon, obviously, and on Joe Biden. And look, Joe Biden says, hey, I take the blame. The buck stops with me. And big credit to owning that mistake. If you look at some of the other presidents, you think Donald Trump would ever take the blame for anything? Absolutely not. He probably would have blamed Obama. Come on. Now, in an interview, Biden was asked about the situation, and he said, what I thought was, we have to gain control of this. We have to move this more quickly. We have to move in a way in which we can take control of that airport, and we did. And he also said, if there's American citizens left, we're going to stay until we get them all out. All right. Finally, Austin says that at present, the main issue now is processing the people who are already at the airport and seeking evacuation. And of course, the other issue is getting people through the Taliban, and whether or not the Taliban will actually continue to allow people to go through, especially Afghan allies who may not have the passports. And so a lot of that is contingent on what the Taliban does and how much they allow people through. And again, that's where you have this, I hate that this is in the hands of this group. If they actually care about their legitimacy as you know, if they care about being a government and becoming, I guess in their terms, a legitimate government, they would try to facilitate the best that they can. I don't know if that's going to happen. Nobody really does. Nobody really does. All right. So now, Austin says this, quote, it's obvious that we're not close to where we want to be in terms of getting the numbers through. So we're going to work that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we're going to get everyone that we possibly can evacuated. And I'll do that as long as we possibly can until the clock runs out or we run out of capability. Now, of course, the agreement is we get out by the end of August. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if we're going to meet that deadline. And there is concern there as well. So tough situation, very, very difficult, very tough. But no, look, it's really bad for the people who are still stuck there, who cannot get out. The situation is very volatile, and anything could happen. And it could be, you know, it could be this goes as smoothly as it possibly can, which right now, not very smooth. It's like a bumpy road, or like no pavement whatsoever. But at least we're not hitting gigantic car-sized potholes, which could be the other situation as well. And so I don't know. Now, let's get to the politics of it, obviously. look, I did segments already where you have Fox News, you have corporate media, CNN, MSNBC, etc., that are basically gloating about Biden's Saigon moment. They can't stop talking about it, right? Oh, it's going to hurt him so badly. Oh, at the Saigon moment, history will never forget. It'll be an albatross around his neck for the rest of eternity. Yeah, okay, right, we get it. Failure, but again, he's accepted that, and he says, I still did the right thing. All right, sticking to his guns, that curmudgeonly streak is actually benefiting now, and actually makes him look a little bit better in this situation, because, again, the American people largely, by far, back this policy decision. All right. That said, you also have some neocons, Warhawks that are trying to use what's going on as a basis, to charge back in, to take care of the Taliban and do more endless war. We don't want to go that route. They're even citing now how Afghanistan, how the Taliban is now sitting on $1 trillion of rare resources that the West, America, we need it. We need it. That's what it's always been about, trying to get those rare materials for corporations. We know. All right. So now we have Fox News, mainstream media, beating the war drum, and of course Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene, getting back to her, using this to, of course, go after Biden politically because it's good, cheap points. Cheap political points, okay? Let me just note that any other president, probably would not have handled this any better because of the way things unfolded. We all knew the Taliban was going to take over, but of course, in mainstream media, among the Pentagon, they actually do, and there's this Washington groupthink that's involved in this. They actually believe that Afghan forces, since they were armed and trained by the best in the world, they have had such a big military, 300,000 strong, backed by advanced U.S. weapons and advanced U.S. training. How could they fall to the Taliban? Again, this is the same military that got beat by Vietnamese farmers hiding in rice paddies with AK-47s. I mean, all the technology and all the the funding and the arms doesn't really matter if you have no will to fight. And that's the very thing. Okay. People who are anti-imperialists, members of the left, we knew that this was going to happen. We knew that the Afghan army was essentially at this point paid mercenaries. And once the money dried up and the United States left, of course, they're going to refuse to fight. What's the point at that point? They had no national identity that coincided with the U.S. puppet government in Kabul. So, that said, finally, one more point, getting back to Greene. What did she do? How has she helped the situation if it's so bad? I mean, it's not like she's not a member of Congress. She's obviously a member of Congress. She could do something, right? Well, she actually did do something. Vice News notes that Greene was one of 16 GOP lawmakers who last month voted against increasing the number of visas for Afghans who helped U.S. troops. Oh, oops. So she literally, actively went out of her way to not help, to vote against bringing in more of our allies, people who have helped us in Afghanistan. And is currently doing nothing to help but swearing at Biden at a gym. Classy. Keep it classy, Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.